Hey guys, it's Mitch. How's it going? Today we're going to look at some horse shit. We're going to look at Youngblood, Bloodsport, Sport Young... Wait, I'm getting locked into a loop here. We're looking at Youngblood, Bloodsport, #1, because every Youngblood series going forward is going to be named after a Jean-Claude Van Damme movie. I'm personally looking forward to Youngblood Legionnaire.
Don't tell me about the Legion!
So I started recording this yesterday and have since promptly gotten sick, so we'll see how well I can do with this. It does give me the impression, though, that this book is cursed. So Youngblood Bloodsport is one of the many attempts by Rob Liefeld to try and bring back the success that Youngblood gave him in 1992. I'm not sure exactly how many attempts there have been. As far as I can tell, since the ending of the original Youngblood line in 1994, so not counting things like Strike File or Battle Zone or Yearbook, and not counting Youngblood Deluxe, which is kind of like an enhanced remaster kind of thing. I believe there have been 9 attempts to try and revive Youngblood, and this is attempt number 6. Now, that number has been hampered by the fact that Rob Liefeld hasn't had the rights to Youngblood for a long time. It may not be the case, but from what I understand, during one of the many attempts to try and spin Youngblood into a cartoon series or TV show or movie or whatever he was trying to do, apparently there was a clause that if Rob backed out of the deal, then the rights to the property would default to the other party. And that's kind of what happened, was Rob decided he didn't like the direction that whatever this venture was going in. And he ended up, losing the rights to Youngblood. And he only recently got those back. So naturally, in the last couple of years, we've been inundated with Youngblood stuff from Rob. This one, as I said, the 6th attempt, this was in 2003. So 11 years after Youngblood first came out. And this is kind of a similar thing to what he's done before with Youngblood, where he seems to figure if he just gets a decent writer, then that will get the right kind of attention to propel Youngblood to success. It's never really worked out. He tried with Alan Moore, he tried with Kurt Busiek. The Youngblood Deluxe things are done with Joe Casey. And in this one, he's actually picked one of the guys who's like one of the hottest writers at the time, in that this is going to be written by Mark Millar. So this would be pre-Civil War, but post-Authority and I believe post-Ultimates. And I'm not really a fan of Mark Millar's writing style, I gotta say. The whole edgelord thing aside, which is, very much a factor, I just don't like the way he writes dialogue. I think he isn't bad at coming up with ideas for comics, and he's not bad for plot twists, although he does tend to stick to kind of recurring motifs. One thing he does seem to love is a super team fighting another version of themselves, essentially. I did buy the Jupiter Circle stuff, or Jupiter's, whatever. There's a couple of Jupiter things. I thought they were all right, although they are trying a bit too hard to try to shock you, as Mark Millar books tend to do. So let's get into this, I guess. This is one of the variant covers for Youngblood Bloodsport #1. I would have liked to have gotten one of the Liefeld ones, but honestly, this book seems to be pretty hard to get a copy of. I think I had this on my want list for a few months before even this one came up, so I had to grab it as quickly as I could. So this is the Andy Park variant, which is just showing at least some of the women that are going to be in the book in Youngblood. And I mean, it's fine, I guess, for... It's just kind of a sketch, really. It doesn't look very much like a cover, particularly not a #1 kind of cover. But, for variants, you just need kind of a different look for every cover. This is fine. And I guess since this is 2003, everybody's trying to emulate Michael Turner hair. That's interesting. All right, so here we go. Youngblood Bloodsport by Mark Millar story, Rob Liefeld art. So I believe this is during the period where Rob Liefeld is just kind of upscaling his pencils to inks. There is no credited inker. I don't think he's inking himself. Interestingly enough, Merritt Michaels, lettering and production, which is, again, interesting because I don't think he does a very good job at the lettering. The production isn't bad. Like, I assume that means stuff like this interior cover here. That looks fine. The letters kind of waver back and forth in terms of quality. So we're going to open up here with Seahawk. Seahawk's not on Youngblood, but Seahawk is in, the universe of Rob Liefeld characters. And Seahawk is relaxing in a hot tub. So the deal with this is basically going to be the whole thing that Rob kind of started with was superheroes as celebrities, only these are these scummy kind of celebrities, which is right up Mark Millar's alley, right? This is before The Boys by about 3 years, to the point where it almost feels like this could be like a little bit of inspiration for Garth Ennis. I kind of doubt it, but you never know. And Seahawk is going to be he's talking to Battlestone in the hot tub here. And of course, the dialogue is going to sound like it should be delivered by Phil Hartman, because that's how every Mark Millar character sounds. where he goes, "Sometimes I worry that supervillains were the only thing keeping us decent, old friend." So the art itself, I mean, the figure is okay. At least Liefeld is putting in a fair amount of, a line work for once. He's not leaving it all up to the colors just yet. He is leaving a little bit up, like all these highlights here, all the underlighting on Seahawk, that's all down to the colorist. Rob didn't think of that shit. Apparently does not know where a nipple goes on the chest, unless it's on a lazily scribbled off boob here. Alright, so now we're going to get into the really stupid shit. So Battlestone replies with Mark Millar's absolute favorite line of dialogue, which is, "What are you talking about, Seahawk?" Every fucking character Mark Millar ever writes has to say that 3 times in any given issue. It's the most irritating tick I think I've ever seen from a writer. But Battlestone saying, "Are you saying you never had a blowjob the whole time we were fighting a good fight against the forces of evil? The way I remember it, we used to go out and get ourselves laid every time we saved the goddamn world, man." And Seahawk replies, I'm just going to read all this out because this is absolutely god-awful dialogue and it just kind of sets the stage for what we're going to get for the entire book. Seahawk replies by saying, "That's precisely my point, Battlestone. Fame was just a perk of the job for us, but it's the prime motivation for all these grasping little teeny boppers. How many of these guys were rocketed from doomed worlds or traumatized by seeing their parents shot dead? They just figured out putting on a cape and cowl was the fastest route to a Barbie pink mansion and a multi-million-dollar sports endorsement." And Battlestone says, "Who gives a rat's ass? 1,000 super teams patrolling the skies means crime's almost non-existent. And everybody's having a good time, baby. We're richer than Dick Cheney and getting our cock sucked by 2 up-and-coming super teams, for Pete's sake. What are you complaining about?" It's like next level cringy. So I'll keep going. "I'm just sick of all the decadence, Battlestone. Sick of the drugs, sick of the champagne. Sick of Scott and Logan here dressing up as their girlfriends and giving us head." Because that's what's going on this page. You can see it down here. But Mark Millar has got Wolverine and Cyclops underwater in the hot tub blowing Seahawk and Battlestone. Both dressed up as Marvel Girl, I guess? But I just need a challenge to remind me why I put this helmet on in the first place. Battlestone says, "Jesus, don't tell me you're thinking about joining the new Youngblood theme they're talking about." He goes, "Why the hell not? They're putting serious money behind this thing, and word is they're going to be tackling missions on a scale we never even dreamed of on the old team. Is it really such a crime to want to help people again instead of all this 24-hour party crap?" And Battlestone says, "Let me answer that question after another series of blowjobs, old chum." So yeah, this is a world where there are just way too many superheroes. Crime is essentially non-existent anymore. So the old guard, the original superheroes, they're just kind of kicking back and relaxing because they got endorsements and shit. I'm a little surprised Rob would go for this gag with Wolverine and Cyclops blowing those guys under the hot tub. I do recall the fuss he made about Peter David making Shatterstar gay back in the day, although I think that was just because that was, a character he came up with, and he felt that went against what Rob's original idea for the character was. Never mind the fact that, if you create a character for one of the big two, you don't get a say in where the character goes from there. That's not how that works. Although his particular argument was hilarious when he said, "No, he's not like that. He's a warrior. He's like an ancient Greek soldier." And he specified ancient Greek as an example for why Shatterstar shouldn't be gay. Anyway, this art's all okay, I guess. Rob's not trying super hard or anything, but he's not slacking too much as far as I can tell. Again, when he puts in a bunch of detail on stuff like Seahawk's face here, that's all right. The lettering is one of the things I noticed, because apparently Merritt Michaels is using a program that compresses the size of the lettering based on the size of the word balloon. So maybe it's partially down to Mark Millar just having people talk way too goddamn much, which is another thing Mark Millar does. Or Merritt's just, he's not picking the right size balloons for this, which he should be. So yeah, that's our kickoff here, is that all of the old characters that you've grown to love in the Extreme Universe, they're all kind of twisted, decadent versions of themselves now that nobody would ever really want to read about. So from there, we're going to cut to Shaft, in midair, kicking the head off a zombie with a jetpack, yelling, "Eat shit and die, shithead." So confirming what we all really knew, which is that Shaft is not bright. Not a terrible double-page spread as far as Rob is concerned. It's fairly awkward, but he's putting some work in on the figure here. That looks all right. This feels like it's right around the time when he was doing that X-Force Volume 2. It has very much that same kind of look. And I went over the first issue of that, and I remember saying at the time that it looked like Rob was putting a lot more effort in than usual. Part of it is just that he can, just add a few more scratches around any given line, and that makes it look as though there was more detail, because he's not doing actual inking. He's just doing the penciling. Okay, so apparently these zombies that Shaft is fighting, these are members of the civil rights movement that have been resuscitated and given jetpacks in order to steal shit by the necromancer. Again, just kind of pointless and trying to be shocking for no real reason. And the thing that they're trying to heist is a strand of Supreme's pubic hair, which has been stolen from the city's science museum. Again, just, yeah, kind of being gross and mildly shocking and just like juvenile. So the point of stealing Supreme's stray pubic hair is so that they can clone an army of super clones. And I guess if you have a super pube army, then you can take over the world pretty easily, probably. And the very flimsy reasoning for resuscitating members of the civil rights movement is that Shaft is supposed to be at a psychological disadvantage against these much-loved historical figures. Except, as we said before, Shaft ain't bright, so he goes, yeah, well, you're talking to the guy who rented Malcolm X thinking it was a mutant flick, buddy. And he rides the corpse of Martin Luther King down into the street, smashes his head into a car. And that's the end of that adventure, I suppose. Tune in next week. The pages themselves, they look fine. You know, I mean, this is Matt Yackey on colors, who I think stuck around with Rob for a while, and he's helping out a fair bit. The figures, I mean, there's not a whole lot to say about the figures. They look okay for Liefeld figures. They're not anything special. The backgrounds, there's quite a bit more going on than I would expect. They all look fairly simplistic, so I think Rob Liefeld would be capable of them. But at the same time, I'm thinking, like, there's no way Rob drew all that shit. Not 2003 Rob, not, you know, like 11 years after Youngblood #1, where he's been the big boss guy for that long. But he didn't credit anybody with, like, pencil assists or technical assists or anything like that, which Rob has usually had no problem doing, so I'm not sure exactly what happened there. I still don't think he drew those backgrounds, though. So after Shaft has smashed the corpse of Martin Luther King, as you do, I suppose, then the cops come up, Shaft has to report to them, and all sorts of other superheroes come out of the woodwork to try and claim that this was a team-up, and that they were all involved because they're all trying to get their profile increased. And then we see the next day in the paper, it says, Hero Troll smashes new crime syndicate. So Troll was the one who managed to get all the credit. That part of things, I don't mind, really. That's fine in terms of, like, the celebrity aspect of superheroes, everybody trying to get in on everything, trying to boost themselves. Everything around that has been absolute bullshit so far, but... And funnily enough, I think Millar's actually going to tone it down a little bit going forward. It felt like, I don't know, he tried to get the shocking stuff out up front. There is part of me that wonders how much of that is Mark Millar, like, him being sincere. You know, I think about when he got his start on Authority and where Warren Ellis had already taken it. And, you know, you had, you know, gay Superman and Batman. You had the drug addict shaman. You had them kind of flouting the rules and not really paying attention to social convention. And so how much of the edgelordiness when he first started out was just him kind of working off of what was already there, and then maybe, you know, amping it up a little bit to try and stake his claim. And then, of course, he had huge success with that. So it's like, okay, this is how I be successful in comics, is just writing shocking stuff over and over again. Like, I don't know, I've never heard a Mark Millar interview. I'm not particularly interested in hearing the guy talk. I just kind of, you know, wonder at what the progression was there. I should point out, like, some of the art in here isn't really bad at all. There's a fair amount of detail going on. Like, I kind of like Shaft's new outfit. You know, there's all sorts of new pads and lines on there. Like, he doesn't go minimalist on this so much as he does later on. There's a whole bunch of people down here in the bottom panel. You know, we're not seeing any of their feet, so that we don't have to worry about whether or not they're all standing on the same plane. So that's all right. But there's stuff like, you know, this hand doesn't look bad at all, actually, to the point where I wonder if Rob drew it. Like, I don't think he did, or I don't think he drew that freehand anyway. If he did, I think he probably lightboxed it. Even this hot dog here, I'm like, did Rob really draw this hot dog? Did he pay this much attention to how a hot dog is supposed to look? I don't know if he does that. Like, this is 2003 Rob, who does seem to have redoubled his efforts at least a little bit in terms of trying to provide, you know, like some quality-looking pages. At the same time, like, this is the same Rob who tossed this off as a design for a mystic dagger. You know, it's a regular dagger, only with extra spikes. Like, the general laziness does still shine through, you know, in the little details. which is the kind of thing that makes me think he's getting help on some of the stuff that is a little bit more difficult. Anyway, after the fight with the corpse of Martin Luther King and his buddies, Shaft meets up with Badrock at a cafe downtown. Badrock's bitching about the fact that Troll stole all the glory for the capture. Shaft is like, I don't care. It was a paid gig. So, as long as I get the money, I'm good. And Badrock's kind of lamenting the fact that, money's getting tougher to come by these days. So you get the impression that they're a little hard up, really, after their Youngblood days have been over. Badrock actually sums it up here okay, where he's like, you make that kind of cash when you're 16 years old, you just figure the gravy train's going to go on forever. And this is, decent actual conversation kind of stuff going on in here. Shaft asks Badrock about, his TV show. He says, I got the plug pulled last week. Because apparently the studio was counting its change. So when Badrock asked for a pay raise, then they just kind of replaced him with whatever other superhero was reasonably popular at the time. So he's looking for a new gig. And apparently his agents advised him that he's not going to be able to really find anything unless he can get a big hit somehow. But he's heard recently that they're starting up a new Youngblood thing. And they're kind of, favoring the old guard in this one. So him and Shaft have the inside track. But he tells Shaft to, keep it under your hat. This is supposed to be like heavy-duty Black Ops shit, so we can't go spreading this around. And that's when the waitress pulls up, only she's a super waitress, because everybody in this cafe has superpowers. Look, there's Hawkman. And she asks if maybe she could give them, her headshot to take to this secret meeting of theirs, because she's also looking for superhero work, as everybody is, apparently. And Shaft kind of ribs Badrock for spilling the beans there. Again, mostly fine-looking stuff, like the face here on Shaft doesn't look too bad at all, really. It feels partially as though Rob has actually kind of learned how to draw eyes on a dude, at least for a minute. There was a while there where he'd make them just these tiny little almonds and put them on opposite sides of a dude's head. But that's a decent drawing of a face, if that's, a Rob Liefeld face. I don't think this is what I've really seen him draw very much after this. The close-up on Badrock here looks pretty cool. He's actually getting some double lighting going on, a little bit backlit. He's also suddenly 5 times the size of Shaft, but that's okay. We can let that slide. The only real problem here is the maid herself, because Rob has given up on figuring out how to draw women. So she gets this, glassy 1,000-yard stare, and he does the thing where he just kind of scribbles all over her abdomen, because that's what he does with chicks around this time. And on the close-up, he just kind of lost it completely and did it around her clavicle as well, so it looks like just kind of like she got throat punched, and it's just sinking in there. But I mean, I can't really criticize Rob too much for overdrawing something. That rarely happens. So, again, I feel like we can kind of let that slide a little bit. All right, then we're going to get a series of phone calls. So we're switching scenes now. We're going to get a photocopied panel that I have difficulty believing Rob drew again. It's a little simplistic, but there's also just enough there that it makes me wonder. Okay, so this is Johnny Panic, who I believe is an Alan Moore creation from his attempt to try to do a Youngblood reboot. And yeah, just playing his messages. So first one's from Kyle, who you can usually tell almost immediately who these are supposed to be. So I imagine this is Kyle Rayner. Says, just letting you know I ain't going to need that team up after all, dude. Wally just cut his vacation time down from 3 weeks to 10 seconds. Next one is Johnny, you home? It's Hollis down at the auto shop, which is a bit of a deep cut because that's the original Owlman. Says, you still owe me $500 for fixing the Panic Mobile and I got bills to pay here, son. Then we get Shen from The Authority, calling him back. Sorry if I made it sound like we might have a spot on the team coming up, but things are actually getting kind of tight for us now, too. And then, moving on. Then another one turning him down for his mortgage application for his secret headquarters after a credit check. And then one that is very clearly Thor being like, Hail, young John, it is thy friend from noble Asgard here. I hope you dost have those $50 owed to Odin's son for a legendary stag party draws ever near. That one I'll grant you is kind of fun. And then the last one is Tiffany at Penile Extensions, and the check that he wrote bounced apparently, so they're going to have to ask for those extra 3 inches back. So, we still got to be extremely juvenile every once in a while. Otherwise, just, they're afraid people are going to stop paying attention or something. And I mean, let's face it, that's the kind of joke that would be right up Rob's alley. He's always had a very juvenile sense of humor from what I've seen. So anyway, after the messages run their course, so no work, people asking for money, and he has to give back half his dick. So, Johnny Panic's partner, I don't know what her name is. Is this Doc Rocket? I don't know. But she says, she suggests this new Youngblood thing that people are putting together because they're also an ex-Youngblood team. So it's like, that's something we could maybe look into. He's like, shit, why not? I got nothing else going for me. Shockingly good pose here. I mean, like, this is an actual Liefeld pose in the background here. There's no way. Look at the size of these pecs. These are like normal-ass pecs. He fucking stole this pose. You know he did. All the muscles interconnect properly and everything. There's even actual, like, foreshortening with the feet, like proper. Yeah, no, he totally stole this pose. And I mean, if he hadn't stolen this pose, if he actually knew how to draw a character in this pose, he would have actually had the feet touching the ground. Or drawn a chair that actually, you know, like fit this better. But like, it turned out well. This costume is quite a bit more elaborate than the usual Liefeld ones are around this time. I think it's Steve Scrose who was drawing Youngblood around this time, and he likes to throw in a bunch of unnecessary detail, I believe. So I guess Rob could thank him for that. All right, so we're cutting back to Shaft and Badrock, and yeah, so they're going to be attending the secret meeting, which is in the secret room that's hidden in Smilin' Stan's super sex shop. So yeah, they just have to step into the masturbation booth, because that's exactly what it's called, and enter their old Youngblood codes into the computer system, and that will take them to the secret meeting. And on their way, they just have to try not to step in the bodily fluids. So, okay, I remember this as toning down as we went. I feel like this is probably still toning down a little bit. We do get some of the lamest sex jokes for porno names here, like Sex Men 2, Watchwoman, Kingdom Come, Dick Knight Returns, and Debbie Does Asgard. Okay, yeah. All right, so then we just get a big shot of everybody here that's going to be attending this meeting by the looks of it. So I assume this is everybody who's been on a Youngblood team at some point or another over the past 10 years. I don't recognize them all, but, oh, that was Doc Rocket from earlier. Hey, look at that. And yeah, nobody says anything here. This is just a big shot to show everybody standing here. It's not terrible in terms of the placement here. Like, he's doing his best to hide the feet everywhere he can. Again, not because he doesn't want to draw feet. Rob is fine with drawing feet. He doesn't want to have to draw the feet next to each other, because then it'll show that he hasn't done an underdrawing, and somebody's feet is going to be lower than they should be. So we really only get Battlestone and Task here. And he did okay with those two. Managed to get Task's foot in front of Battlestone's. It looks like he had to stretch the foot out a little bit to do it. Like, it probably wouldn't look that great if Task was unobstructed. You'd be like, man, that's one stretched out shin bone. But it's good enough to pass the eye test. So, I mean, that's something. And, he did draw all these characters. For the most part, they look pretty solid. He is doing the lumpy mashed potatoes for the abs now. There was like a brief moment where it felt like Rob knew how to draw abs all of a sudden. And yeah, he's past that now. And there's a bit of a reunion going on. Shaft hugs Vogue. Badrock says hey to Sentinel. I think this is before Judgment Day, I would assume. Although I don't know what continuity this is supposed to be in, because there's evidence that this isn't in mainstream Youngblood continuity. We'll get there in a second. Vogue says Shaft looks great. Shaft says, you're looking pretty amazing yourself there, Vogue, so realistically proportioned. Have you been working out or something? So, I don't know about that, but, it's not a bad joke to slip in there, I guess. And then Suprema shows up late. She was dealing with actual problems off in another dimension, which Masada bitches about. Says, I'm not sure why you even bothered to show up. It's not like you need the cash with all these big money alternate reality gigs that you do. And it's not like you need the profile when you're related to the world's mightiest mortal, like people over-talking, just kind of running their mouth, as most Mark Millar characters tend to do. And Suprema says she's here just because she wants to help out. Which is fine, no problem. And so with everybody here, that's when the guy running the show reveals himself, and it's Agent Graves, who, if we recall from Extreme Sacrifice, is the devil. So yeah, that's kind of the thing that makes you go, okay, wait a minute, so is this actually supposed to be in that same kind of continuity? Also, pretty terrible looking face. I mean, like, this is kind of a standard Liefeld woman's face. He still can't match up the eyes. Like, look at this. Like, that's where the other eye should be, right? Like, nope. Did the same thing over here. Drew them like that, which is fine, but then didn't draw the nose to match. Or just kind of lost the plot somewhere in the cheekbone here. I'm not even sure. It does just kind of make her look like, yeah, she got the one eye kind of floating away. And yeah, so nobody mentions that Graves is the devil. So I don't think this is the same thing. So anyway, Graves is here to give his pitch on what the purpose of the new Youngblood thing is. And it's basically to declare Youngblood as the new top dogs. So he's talking about the people who are currently the hot new item, whoever that is. He doesn't really say. But he's like, you see that $50 billion headquarters they were showing off in People magazine? Well, this new team's got a $100 billion HQ, soldier. It's like, oh, impressive. You hear them bragging about how they've saved the world a few times? Ladies and gentlemen, my new Youngblood is going to be saving 1,000 different universes. So not hyperbolic at all. So the initiative we're putting together is being funded by 999 parallel realities, and you're going to be responsible for literally trillions of lives. Think of the fame, think of the glamour, think of all those little digits when your bank statements come in. And it's like, okay, sure. Like this is kind of, again, getting back to the point of Youngblood, where it's all about the whole celebrity status thing. And Shaft asks what the catch is, and Graves says, we've only got room for one of you. And whoever this person here is like, okay, how can you just have a team with one person? It doesn't make any sense. He's like, well, no, the team's already been put together. It's an interdimensional team now. So we're taking team members from other realities. We'll have the best one from each reality on the team, and that will be the force that goes from dimension to dimension and saving planets, all that kind of shit. So Supreme asks how they're supposed to determine who's going to be the member that gets sent to take part in this team. And Graves says, well, it's a last man standing kind of thing, actually. Last man alive is the winner, and everybody else gets a nice state funeral. So he is, just saying, the winner is the survivor. Which, I'll admit, is kind of a fun idea, I suppose. There's some potential in that. So, the closing remarks here are, this new Youngblood we're putting together requires the best of the best of the best. We don't have room for anyone squeamish about little things like murdering former teammates. We need shits of the highest order here. As of midnight, it's kill or be killed, I'm afraid. And apparently that's the breaking point for Seahawk. He's heard enough. And he's like, no, this is bullshit. I'm just taking off. I might not be famous anymore, but I don't have to take part in this horseshit. And Graves calls after him. Actually, you're contractually bound. I'm not sure what the contract was. They just kind of showed up at a meeting. Maybe this is a contract they signed previously as part of Youngblood. I don't even know. But Seahawk doesn't give a shit. He's going to keep on walking. Hey, I like the physique he's come up with here. I believe Rob could draw that. That seems about right. A whole lot of striation going on. Like a lot of it is down to the colorist, but, most of those lines there, those are Rob. And, so as Seahawk is leaving, he, I assume, gets his head shot off or maybe expanded to ridiculous size to the point where it just kind of wobbles off his body. It's hard to tell exactly. This feels a little bit like Rob is trying to copy the double page splash in Youngblood number 10 where Chapel shoots himself, only he kind of forgot how he did it. And I guess didn't feel like looking it up or anything. So he devoted most of the drawing to just Seahawk's chest here. Like, if you really wanted to do an impact properly, I think you would probably want to center the exploding head a little bit more. But, we get the picture, I guess. That's fine. So that causes Battlestone to snap, and Sentinel and Combat have to hold him back. This is a pretty good-looking splash page. Like, I'm just, everything looks pretty good in it, I would say. I would not say that Rob knows how to shadow a face like this, because if you look underneath the coloring, the scribbling's just everywhere, and it doesn't look like it's too particular about what shadows are meant to go where. So it looks like that was mostly up to the colors to figure out. And hey, they did a fine job. So yeah, Battlestone calls Graves the F word. No, not that F word, the other one. Because again, it's been too long since we've attempted to be shocking. It's been like 2 pages. And everybody stands shocked as Graves says, this is him proving his point. If you're not with us, then you're just kind of taking yourself out of the running willingly. Anything goes as far as combat is concerned. Fight as dirty as you like. We're not playing by any outdated code of conduct here. Now, does anyone have any questions before you go back home to say goodbye to your relatives and loved ones? And it says, let the games begin. So I guess this was probably Knight's Saber? I think it's Knight's Saber. It looks like a cross between Night Saber and Akuma, if I'm being honest. But yeah, it seems as though Night Saber is acting as some kind of enforcer for this whole thing, which makes me wonder why everybody doesn't just kind of rush him right now. If he's the only one who's going to be killing you, if you might leave, I suppose they could always get another replacement, but not the best splash to end on, not terrible. I suppose this is kind of middle of the road. And colorist making up a whole lot of the lighting here, just to make this a bit more interesting, which is probably for the best. Okay, and that's going to do it for the story here. We're also going to get a little bit of just who everybody is. Probably the most interesting description is just Mark Millar and Rob Liefeld. So Mark Millar is the author of the best-selling Ultimates and Ultimate X-Men. His current work includes Superman Red Sun from DC Comics and Trouble from the relaunched Epic imprint. Miller gained his current status as one of comics' most popular writers with his controversial run on The Authority. So, okay, he's selling it based on controversy. So here's all sorts of controversy in issue 1. Additionally, Mark Millar will launch several creator-owned books later in 2003. And then they plug Miller World. And yeah, I guess he did do that, didn't he? I've always kind of gotten the impression that the main reason Mark Millar is successful, like as successful as he's been, is just because he's one of the only people who's willing to pay like top talent money. Okay, let's see the Rob Liefeld description. Perhaps best known as one of the breakaway creators who formed Image Comics. Began his comic career as a young artist with DC Comics' Hawk and Dove series. He quickly became a fan favorite after launching X-Force, Cable, and Deadpool at Marvel Comics. At Image, his creator-owned series changed everything we know it in the comic medium. Oh, they still don't have editors. Okay. Youngblood, Supreme, Prophet, and Brigade led the Image explosion of the early 90s. Sure they did. In addition to the new Youngblood Bloodsport series with Mark Millar, Rob pens 2 online comic strips, Shrink, which is fucking terrible, which is slated for production as a feature film, there we go, starring Jennifer Lopez, and Planet Terry, which is in development as a movie at New Line Cinema. So, yeah, this is, once again, Rob trying to, just let everybody know that I'm doing Hollywood stuff, and so much Hollywood stuff is going to happen as a result of me doing the stuff. Meanwhile, it's 30 years later, no Hollywood stuff has ever happened from Rob being in Hollywood. And we got an ad for Bloodsport number 2, which did not happen. Apparently there is a Bloodsport number 2, I should point out, but it looks like it was maybe a convention exclusive or something like that, and was never actually published. So it's extremely hard to get a hold of. Like, this one was hard enough. I'm not even sure how this was put out. Oh, there's the price. I wondered what the hell the deal was, because the price is not listed on the front. Okay, so it was actually published. That's good to know. So anyway, yeah, that's Youngblood Bloodsport number 1. The concept itself isn't the worst. I don't know that it exactly works for Youngblood, but sure, why not? You do have to twist everything around to make it so everybody's obsessed with fame and money and all that shit, which Rob never really focused on, and, maybe should have at least a little bit, considering that was kind of the basis for the concept. I don't think he needed to take it to this degree. I don't even know how much he enjoyed doing this, really. Again, I think the puerile humor probably helped him, convince him that this was an okay deal. Coupled with, Mark Millar's recent success probably convinced him, okay, yeah, this is the direction comics are going right now. Where they're just getting childish, but not in the old way kind of childish, where there were heroes and villains. In the new way, where Cyclops and Wolverine suck off Seahawk and Battlestone in the hot tub. So yeah, that's the Youngblood everybody wants to read, I'm sure. And yeah, so never got to an issue 2. I'm pretty sure this is, I know a few years before this, Rob had started soliciting the first issue of a series and then deciding whether or not to do an issue 2 based on the sales of that first solicitation. And surprise, surprise, he rarely got an issue 2 out. I mean, part of the problem, I think, is that he started this in 97. So, the top books at the time, we're still bringing in like 300,000 copies sold, I think. Like, Jim Lee's Fantastic Four was in that neighborhood. And that was just the year before. So I imagine Liefeld was thinking we have to at least crack 6 figures, and he probably didn't get there in 97. And then now by 2003, I imagine it's almost like a self-fulfilling prophecy. Because, of course, by only soliciting 1 and then, probably touting it as an ongoing series, time after time after time, and then what do you know, a second issue never comes out. I think retailers are starting to give up on him a little bit. The fact this one didn't get a second issue is a little surprising because he is drawing it. I think that's probably why he's drawing it, because he's tried this several times before with completely different creative teams, like somebody else writing it, somebody else drawing it, and he's not getting the numbers he wants. So it's like, okay, you know what? I'm going to get the hottest writer around, and I'm going to draw it, and we're going to crack 6 figures if it kills me. And I don't think he really got it. I mean, this is pretty hard to come by. I think if there had been 100,000 copies of this thing printed, it probably would have been a lot easier for me to get a copy. So anyway, yeah, that's this Youngblood. It's just another failed Youngblood. I'd feel bad for Ribbon Rob this much, I think, except, there really hasn't been a successful Youngblood at this point since the first series. And I mean, 22 years later, there still hasn't really been a successful one, except maybe the most recent, but even then, I don't think that's in terms of copies sold. That's in terms of how much Rob is charging for specialty items. He likes to crow about having made $500,000 on his most recent Youngblood endeavor. If that thing sold 10,000 copies, I would be shocked. This is more a case of over the years, Rob has managed to whittle his audience down to like 1,000 people, any of whom would be willing to shell out $500 for a Rob property if it came to that. Anybody else, if you're not a complete sycophant, Rob doesn't have any time for you. Sorry. I feel like over the years I've tried to give Rob the benefit of the doubt, and he just kind of keeps proving that he's a prick over and over again. So I might be kind of done. I don't know, I guess we'll have to wait and see until the next Rob thing that I review, which I'm sure will happen sometime in the next month or two. There's always another Rob thing to review. Anyway, that's going to do it for this one. Thanks very much for watching, guys. If you like this video, please hit the like button. It helps with all the algorithm stuff. If you want to see more, hit subscribe. And if you really want to help out, in the description, there's a link to my Patreon. And if you go subscribe there, that'll give you access to everything I do. So all sorts of videos, everything to do with the Blood Force comics, including the Blood Force comics, every single part of it there. I'm running out of breath. As I said, still sick, can't breathe through my nose. Also in the description, there's a link to the merch store. That's where you can get the Blood Force merch. You can also follow me on Instagram and DM me there for commissions, because commissions are open. So yeah, that's going to do it. Thanks again for watching, guys. I will see you in the next one. Bye-bye.